This training, very kindly, my lovely friend Tom, who is a video genius in all areas of video, recording, sound, setup, tech, edit, the whole shebang, broadcasting and going live, which is what we're talking about tonight, has agreed to come in and give us the anatomy of a brilliant live, which is really, really important for everybody in Pretty Pro members, because we're all at some point either going live and speaking to people, or we are trying to be more visible, and we're using video in all different corners of our marketing strategy and also in the delivery of our services, so no pressure for video in our lives. We just are leaning on it quite considerably. So without taking up too much of the limelight, I will pass over to Tom.
This is all about live video. And what I'm going to do is just take you through the steps that I know are kind of vital when it comes to delivering a good quality live. But we'll just pause a moment before we do that. But why are we going live in the first place? Why are we all using live video? Why are we sort of all being told that live video is so great? I think it's first of all worth realizing and understanding the difference between live video and pre-recorded content. So whilst they are both pieces of video content, they in my opinion, they do very different things. So live pre-recorded content is that kind of it's great for course delivery. It's great for sort of video blog content. It's great for that kind of content that you will create, which will help people on the journey down your sales and marketing funnel. So it could be education, it could be testimonials, it could be case studies, anything like that. With live video, I think some of the problems that we have around it stem from the fact that we think about it as though we're doing pre-recorded content. The thing with pre-recorded content is you can do retakes and you can get it looking really good, perfect every time, so that it's perfect every time. Live video isn't like that. Live video is imperfect, it is messy, it can be pretty daunting sometimes, but all of those things are okay, because I don't think any of us expect live video to be perfect. It's only us when we're delivering that kind of want it to be absolutely spot on. So I think the first thing I want you to kind of think about is this idea that lives aren't perfect. Lives are never going to be perfect. They are imperfect beasts, and that's great. That's exactly how they should be, because part of the process is about showing you for you. This is a way for you to connect with your ideal audience, for you to build a personal link with people, so that people can understand your personality, the way you do things, all of these different things that lives do that perhaps don't come across in pre-recorded content in quite the same way. You can get a much greater sense of the way somebody speaks naturally, the kind of the cadences of their voice, the kind of the just their for want of a better word, their tics and the way they are. So I think if you think about these two things, the thing that links them is the fact that it's video, but they are actually very, very different beasts. The other thing I want to get you to think about is I know a lot of us, there are two major objections that I hear from people when I say, do you go live? Actually three, but the two are, I don't like the way I look, and I'm worried I'll lose my train of thought. And we're going to deal with the train of thought stuff with the plan. So I've got a checklist here for you that I'm going to share, if that's all right with Dawny. But there's a little bit of interesting neuroscience around why we don't like ourselves when we see ourselves on camera. And hopefully I'm going to give you some things to potentially reframe the way you see yourself on screen. Because for me, this was a huge deal. I remember when I first decided to step from behind the camera and get in front of the camera, about 3 years ago, I remember standing in front of the camera seriously for the first time and thinking, who the hell is that fat bald guy? And, you know, in my head, I was still 24. I had a beautiful head of hair. I was sort of trim. And then I was like, oh God, is that what I really look like? Of course it's what I look like. It's how everybody sees me. But when you see yourself on screen, you are seeing yourself as other people see you. And I say as other people see you because the way we build a mental image of ourselves is mostly through looking in mirrors. And of course, a mirror image is different to an image on screen. It's flipped. And of course, the human brain is very good at assessing the human face. It's kind of it seems to be hardwired into us. So we build our sense of how we look through what we see in the mirror. And when we're presented with an image on the screen, there are subtle differences. All of our faces are subtly asymmetrical. You know, I've got, you know, a slightly wonky chin and one ear is slightly different shape to the other, and all that kind of stuff. They're really subtle, but your brain picks up on them. And you have to refamiliarize the way you see yourself on screen. So one of the things I did is I just printed out a bunch of screenshots and I put them in places that I'd see them. And for a couple of weeks, I kind of I would just get used to the way I look on screen, to the point where it didn't kind of even figure anymore. And now I'm quite happy, you know, I really enjoy going live. I really enjoy presenting on screen because I've kind of got over that sort of pain, that pulling back, that pain that I felt about how I saw myself on screen. And there was a study done at Harvard in the late 70s where people were shown these two things, so their on-screen image and their mirror image. And there was a definite sort of psychological difference in the way people saw themselves. But this was recently underscored by a new study that was done, where brain imaging was done whilst people were looking at images themselves in the mirror and on screen, and indeed different parts of the brain were lighting up as we looked at different. So it is a very specific response that we have to the way we see ourselves on screen. So getting yourself comfortable with that is really important, because once you can do that, everything else kind of feels a little bit easier if you've got past the kind of I hate myself on screen. And in fact, language is really important here. I so frequently hear people say, I hate the way I look on screen. Imagine imagine your best friend comes to you and says, I've got you. I've made some videos. I'd love you to have a look at this. And they show you the video and you turn around to them and go, I really hate the way you look on screen. That would be awful. What an awful thing to do. That would be dreadful. So why do we do it to ourselves? We're so eager to kind of to tell ourselves these dreadful things we'd never dream of telling to anybody else. So I think we have to be a bit kinder to ourselves when it comes to video and live content, that kind of thing. So a bit of reprogramming is helpful. But that's the first stage. Any questions so far? And actually, Dawney says, so it's not liking the sound of your voice as well, isn't it? And actually, that's another thing you can do. You can take a recording and you listen to that recording regularly, because obviously you're hearing yourself as everybody else hears you. So it's about building up a new mental picture of how you are and how you sort of present to other people. Thank you, Jen. It is very nice. It's actually a gin and it. So it's a measure of vermouth and a measure of gin with a cherry and a bit of ice. There we go.
Just to educate everybody, Tom does content and cocktails. So you'll get a little bit of information about fantastic video work and content creation, and then whenever you need it, you'll also get information on cocktails. So Tom's your guide for recipes.
Yes, yeah, I do like a concept, but there we go. I'm not saying they're necessary for doing lives, but I won't lie. It does make things a little easier. Okay, so the anatomy of a live. How do we, assuming we've got ourselves comfortable with the idea of being on camera, how do we then ensure that we are coming into a live prepared, delivering a great live, and then doing the relevant follow-up afterwards? So I'm going to break this down into these different sections. So before you go live, what are you doing? What should we be thinking about before we go live? So obviously, the first thing you need to do is decide on the topic. What are you going to be talking about? So letting yourself, giving yourself time to think about a topic that's relevant to your audience. And this kind of ties into a wider idea of content planning. If you're always shooting from the hip with your content, you're going to miss more often than not. If you have planned your content in advance, and that includes lives as well, you will be able to connect with your audience much more, with much greater impact on a much greater basis. So use the content planning process. So I like to do 3 months in advance. I always like to know the conversations I'm having 3 months in advance, and that can tie into launches. So if you know that you're gearing up to a launch, if you're into that launch cycle, you know that X amount of weeks beforehand, you will be wanting to talk to people and engage with people around the whatever topics you want them to. You get to guide the conversation, and so lives are no different to that. So think about your your topic beforehand and tie it into your content plan. Decide on a date and time. That's your next step. It's fairly obvious. So decide on a date and time and tell people about it. Let people know what's happening, when, and what it's about. Give them plenty of time. Promote the live in your group, business page, and personal pages. I mean, all this stuff is really, really obvious. You're not, there's nothing I'm saying here that should be like, oh, what a good idea. So this is, taking, this comes down to visibility, doesn't it? If you've got a great live content, you really want as many people to know about it as possible. And that could just be going and making sure you're sharing it on your personal page, your business page, and your groups, all the places you've got sort of online real estate, as it were. But then if you've got other people who can share that content as well, try and get it out to the widest possible network as possible. Because, there's nothing worse than kind of that sort of tumbleweed effect that you get when you go live and you go, and one person, you see, if nobody turns up, I don't mind that. But if one person turns up for a few seconds and goes away, that's really bad, isn't it? You feel like, well, no, come back. Don't go. I personally, I hate that. That always makes me feel really sad. So I'd rather increase my chances of lots of people being there by telling lots of people about it. This is only a small percentage of the people who see it will it be kind of relevant to, and will turn up, and they might not stay for the whole thing. But with Content and Cocktails, which is incidentally Thursdays at 8 p.m, I've now got a core of people who are there for the whole hour every Thursday. Now, whether they're there to just come and take the piss, I don't know. Sometimes they are. But they'll always ask really good questions. But with lives, letting people know when it's happening in the widest possible way just seems like a really good sensible way to do it. So obviously the next thing is choose as part of this preamble process, you've got to choose where you're going live. Are you going to be, is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Instagram? On Periscope, whatever, wherever you are going live, let people know about them. Let people know about the platform. Now, if you're using a platform like StreamYard or Restream or something like that, you can go live to multiple platforms simultaneously, which will radically improve your chances of connecting with the right audience. I really like doing that. I use StreamYard mostly just because that's the one I chose and set up. There's quite a few different ones to choose from, and they're all very good. But I like the functionality of being able to go live to lots of different platforms simultaneously. Now, the one thing I've never really got to grips with is whether or not it affects the reach using platforms like StreamYard. I would imagine that it probably does, but I think you gain more than you lose potentially with the functionality, the ability to go live to multiple platforms will outweigh the potential loss of kind of reach, because it always seems with platforms like Facebook, if you're using third-party apps to plug, sort of to access it or do something on it, you always seem to kind of you always seem to get penalized in terms of the reach. So the other thing, and this is key, before you go live, plan your live. Just a simple, now all I do is just a simple set of bullet points. So we'll get on to the planning of it in more detail in a second, but plan before you go live. Don't sort of be scribbling stuff down as you're doing it, because you're gonna make things way harder. The purpose of this checklist is to make the job of the live easy. Dawley's just said something really interesting there, and that's something I'm going to try. Sometimes I go live direct in the group for a few seconds first. That is a nice tip. I like that a lot. I'm stealing that. I'm stealing that big time. So we'll get on to the structure of the live in a second, because there are a few other things I want to sort of walk you through beforehand. You need to check your setup, your tech setup, and the environment you're in before as well. So obviously, first of all, make sure your mic's working. Make sure your camera's working. Have you got enough battery? Is it charged up? And this is an important one. Is your lens clean? Give your lens a bit of a wipe. Don't forget, if you're going live on your mobile, our mobiles are grubby things, so just give it a wipe, just to make sure your lens is clean, so you're getting the best possible image you can. Now this is something that I lit properly. Now a lot of people don't consider lighting too deeply when they're doing their lives, but it can make a real difference. So for me, all I've got is a small light panel there. Just kind of, it's a little dimmable panel just over my, too light, too dark. And actually, it's just a little lift. That could quite easily be a household lamp with a bit of muslin dropped over the front of it to soften it. You just want a bit of soft light to lift your face, because actually, if you turn that off, it's a much flatter image. I want people to remember my lives, and part of the way you do that is with the image. We are essentially visual communicators, and so using all the tools and tips and tricks you've got at your advantage is really, really valuable. So a little light, and you can just use a domestic task light, but pop something over, a bit of muslin over the front of it to just soften that light down a bit, or have a window lighting you. Don't sit with your back to a window, because you'll get the crime watch look as your kind of camera sets its exposure for the window rather than you. You want your camera to be exposing your face rather than the background, because you'll end up with a sort of a very dark kind of exposure on your body and your face, and it's sort of the correct exposure on the window, which is why you sometimes see that very contrasted kind of image when you see people filming against a window. Use a tripod, and if you can, and a phone stand. If you're using your phone, get a cheapy tripod and a clamp, and just kind of some way of securing your phone, rather than you kind of doing the whole sort of shaky phone, holding it up, trying to sort of create something that's never going to work, frankly. This is important. Get the angle right. So very often you'll see the sort of the low angle camera. So people will put their camera on their desk and they'll be looking down at it, and you get that sort of up the nose shot, and you'll sort of get that thing where you kind of get all the. If I did it, it'd be just all chins. I want my camera slightly above eye level, so I can be looking straight down the lens. Eyes roughly at the 2/3 mark, and the sort of the framing to feel to feel right, to feel normal. And this is the same whether it's portrait or landscape. So you want your eyes to be roughly 2/3 of the way up. So yeah, avoid those kind of up the nose shots. If you're using your phone, try and mute other notifications, because those can be quite sort of distracting. Also make sure your phone's charged. I've gone live a few times and realized that my phone was on that sort of terrifying 5%, and you think, oh god, right, and you're, instead of concentrating on the live, you're dividing your attention between audience and your phone battery level. Check your background. Is it neat and tidy? Ish. And there's nothing kind of incriminating in the way, nothing. The setup, you kind of want a bit of interest. I see a lot of people go live against a very sort of plain white wall, and that can look great, but sometimes a little bit of depth and a bit of kind of interest behind you is no bad thing. But if you're going to do that, sort of have a care to sort of keeping it tidy. Don't show stuff you wouldn't want to show. This is about image as much as it's about anything. So you want to present to your audience in a way that is congruent with your brand, that is going to help people understand you better, and you want people concentrating on you rather than what's going on behind. So here's the structure of a live. This is what I do. So I introduce myself. So that would be my as Danny Waller says, your vocal business card. It's you want to start every live by telling people who you are, who you help, what you do. Let people know. Let people know repeatedly, again and again and again and again, and eventually they'll remember. Because it took me ages for people, it's like, oh, you're the video guy. Yeah, eventually people remember. So hone that intro and keep it consistent. So then you get into the three steps. So first of all, tell them so you've got your topic, tell them what you're going to tell them. So you will start your live by outlining what people are going to learn. And it could be during this live, I'm going to tell you 3 ways to set up the perfect YouTube channel, and stick around to the end for an amazing bonus 4th tip. Something like that. So you tell them what you're going to be telling them. Then you deliver the content. You tell them again. You actually deliver the content. And then you sum it up. So you've introduced the concepts you're going to be telling people about. You've delivered the information, and then you sum up that information in 3 or 4 sentences. And then, and this is the important bit, give people a call to action at the end of your lives. Make sure you're telling people to do something. If you've got something you want people to do, whether it's sign up to something or go and enjoy, go and look at another piece of content, give people something to do next. If people have stuck with you to the end, they are going to be hungry for more of what you've got. Now, when it comes to actually delivering the middle bit, I just bullet point it down. There's no point scripting this tightly, because the reality is you are going to go off at tangents. You're going to get, you because of just the nature of the questions that come in, you're going to get pulled back down. So you need a way to sort of refocus on your final destination, something to pull you back onto the path, and just a bullet point of list. And I cross them as I do my life. I cross them off so that I can look at it at a glance. I always want something that is both, large print, easy to read, and I can, I just cross it off. I know I don't have to go back. So keep it simple, make it simple for yourself. Bullet point it out. And that call to action at the end is really important. You've earned it. If people have been there learning from you for kind of 10+ minutes, You've earned a call to you've earned the right to get them to go and do something, to say, I've got something amazing for you, or whatever. So don't forget the call to action. So does that all make sense so far? Is that helpful? Is there anything here that you feel I could sort of expand on, or anything? I can just see nodding heads, which is good. Nobody going, oh, please stop. Now, I mentioned questions. Questions can be incredibly derailing, but answer them at a time that suits you. Don't feel that you have to kind of, the question pops up and you go, oh, we're off. We're answering something different. Finish your train of thought. Come to the questions either at the end or at a point which doesn't feel like you're just being dragged away from the main kind of thrust of what you're doing. And another, let's just spark something else. So don't do this. I'm sure you'll have seen this on lives where you tune into it. Somebody's promoted a live. It sounded really good. You tune in, and the person is just sat there going, "I'll just wait for a few more people to arrive." And you go, "Okay, I'm here." And they go, "Well, just another minute. Another minute? We'll just give it another minute." And you're waiting, thinking nobody else is going to come. And in that minute where this person's been saying just another, everybody else has left. So you get straight into it. If people are late, tough. Give it 10 seconds when the live starts, but you've got your introduction. That's the time when people can come in before you get into the meeting. But don't sit around waiting for it to fill up. Get into it, because you'll lose more people if you sort of sit around going, I'll wait for people to turn up. When I first started going live, I did it and I was like, oh, why is there nobody here? It's because they all buggered off. They were, they're not going to stick around. So that's the sort of structure I would use, that kind of introduction. So to you, your personal pitch, who you work for, what you do, an introduction to the topic of the day. So tell them what people are going to learn. Then the middle bit, the sort of the meat of it, where you deliver the value. The summary, where you just sum it up. And then at the end, that call to action. But that middle bit, bullet pointed out, so that you don't lose your thread if you get people kind of asking questions or get sidetracked or whatever. Something you can always come back to easily and simply, and that isn't overly complicated. So just bullet point out what you're going to be delivering. And then obviously you end your live and you do your celebration. Yeah, I've done a live. It's great. They love me. I've got an audience. So you've not just done an amazing live, you've generated an amazing piece of content. So you now need to take that and turn it into other stuff. So save your video, download it, and repurpose it. Take that video and chop it up into small bits. Extract as much value from that video as you can. Get a transcript, turn it into a blog. Extract the audio to turn it into a podcast. Whatever you do with it, treat it as a fully exploitable kind of asset. This is something to be carved up into as many different things as you can do. Now, I'm really guilty of this. I don't do it. I've spent a lot of time doing it for clients, but I look at my YouTube channel and go, because I'm using StreamYard, it goes live onto my YouTube channel. So there's regular content appearing there. And I look at that and go, yeah, that's enough. But in reality, I should be taking those and pulling out different pieces of content from there, because actually it's a very easy thing to do. This doesn't have to be a big headache. You can be doing that repurposing process quite easily. And in fact, just simply dividing it up into 3 parts and posting those 3 parts properly optimized on your YouTube channel as a 3-part series about X, you've instantly, multiplied the value of that piece of content by 3. It's great. So repurposing. Another thing to do is you might not have had a chance to answer all the questions that were posed in one go. So come back to those. That provides opportunities for future lives. So if you see some questions that are great, you don't have to answer them there and then. You can say, that's great. That's a really interesting question. I'm going to come back to that next week as a live. So don't sort of feel the need to dive into something there and then. You can bank them and come to them later. When your audience starts giving you content ideas, it's brilliant because you know that is exactly what people are after. A summary post summing up what you told them, so you can you'll get the majority of views on your replay. That's just unless you are talking to a crazy big audience, which most of us, the reality is we will be getting most of our views on the replay. So make sure there are summary posts, signposting people towards the content to let them know that there is something of value here for them. So it's going to deliver value to them. And then also repost links to your live on other channels to encourage replay views. So don't be shy about putting your live forward after the fact. You've done all that promo work up front, follow it up in similar places or the same places with links to the content you did before. So that really is the structure that I use, that before, during, and after kind of anatomy of a live. It sounds like a lot, but actually it's kind of, once you get into the rhythm of it, it will flow very nicely. And actually you'll be able to shorthand an awful lot of that. So for example, with the tech setup, once your tech setup is done, you don't have to worry about it other than making sure your lens is clean. That's saying you can go, yeah, I know that works. So are there any? I can see some questions that come up, so I'll get into those in a second. But are there any? Is there any sort of anything that anybody would like to say, or comments, or questions? Now I don't know.
Feel free to unmute yourself, ladies. If
Yeah.
you want to ask Tom some questions. I've got a question for you, Tom. What's your top tip on how to overcome a mistake? Because this is something that I think I've kind of got my own version of now, but this is a question I get asked a lot. So if you get all of the pre-planning correct and you've got all of your setup perfect, and sometimes that can feel a bit like pressure, but say for instance you get all of that and you've advertised it and people have shown up, what do you do then if you cock up, basically? What have you got, like, any tips for that?
I think this comes back to the idea that actually live TV is a fraught experience for seasoned presenters. We are not professional presenters. I think this comes partly back to the being kind to yourself. And if your audience is there waiting for you to cock up, then possibly it might be time to do some work to find a kinder audience. And I think that comes down to, but the reality is, if people are tuning in to hear from you, the mistakes don't matter. I mean, it happened a few weeks ago. I was talking and I just completely lost the plot. I was like, I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm doing. And what I love about Content and Cocktails is that if I ever get to a point where I have a complete brain fart, I can just mix myself a cocktail. It's a bit of, I've got some business to do whilst my brain's going, oh, okay, I'm mixing a cocktail here, but actually there's part of my brain which is going, okay, so what's the last thing you remember saying? Where did you put it down last? And you're catching up as you're doing this thing and talking about the kind of part of your brain's going, right, okay, where were we? Yeah. So, you can have a bit of business to do. So, but I think the reality is, with lives, it is live, and there is just the reality that you are going to at some point fluff things, and if you accept that and understand that it doesn't matter at all,
yeah,
I think that's a nice have some coping mechanisms in sort of in the form of maybe, you know, a cup of tea or a glass of water or something like that. You can take a slurp or something, just to buy yourself a few seconds to regroup. But if you've got your plan in front of you, you've always got those bullet points to come back to. But also, if you have made a mistake, you know, like you're saying, if you lose your train of thought in big style, you can come back to that list. But also, it doesn't massively matter. You just be honest. And
It can be quite endearing sometimes, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this humanizes us. I think actually there's nothing more upsetting when you see somebody sitting in front of you and you think, oh my God, they're so good. It can be quite alienating when you hear somebody speaking, and they are just fluent to the point of perfection. You think, no, this is weird. Are they a robot or are they a person? I'd much rather have a real human being in front of me and alive that I can connect with. So I think it's a really good point, and I think it's one that is actually top of a lot of people's minds. But you can mitigate against that being a hugely derailing event by having your plan, maybe having sort of a few other things that you can do. Have a biscuit to nibble on, or a cup of tea, something like that.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's always a little bit shocking to people the first time they are introduced to the idea that a live session should be planned out, because there is this kind of misconception that a live session should be an improvised event, like you should just show up live, right? No, but people do, don't they?
Yeah.
They just assume that you just show up live, and I quite often do come on live off the cuff, but I always have a little write down, a little note, even if it's on the fly before I do. But a lot of people think that we just kind of like turn the camera on and show up just off the cuff, right?
That makes me feel a little bit ill, because actually doing that is a guaranteed way for me to go, you know, if you want 15 minutes of me looking a bit nervous, not saying very much, that would be the best way to do it, to just kind of flip the camera on and go, so what you doing today? But you know, you want, I think, have a plan, like you say, even if it's just hastily scrolled down 5 bullet points of what you're going to be talking about.
It can be helpful. So our MZ Bobs has just said, I do often though just go live when I'm out and about teaching on location, and it's often off the cuff. And actually that's a good point, because I've done that as well. When you go somewhere and I'll think to myself, oh, my pretties will love this, and I'll just go live. And sometimes those have been the best ones, but I do think with those ones they're very much conversational. So you kind of come on and see who's on and ask a couple of questions, and then you just bounce off what you're getting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a slightly different so I think style. Yeah, and because I really love, so I'll occasionally, back when the children went to school, if you remember those days,
vaguely,
I would go and I'd drop the kids off at school, then I'd walk down to the seafront and I'd go and get myself a coffee, and I'd go and sit down by the sea, and I'd often just go live to my group and say, morning, how you doing? I'm down by the sea having a coffee. And you know, a thought as I'd walk from school up to the coffee place, you know, a thought would have cropped up to me. I thought, oh, I'm going to go live on that. But actually that's much more of a conversation, isn't it? You have an idea and you think, I would like to take this one short, small idea to my group, because I'm in the mood for that. But in reality, you've probably got, you know, there is a plan. I think just kind of going live because you think going live is a good idea is dangerous. Not dangerous, but you know what I mean. It's fraught potentially with more opportunities to slip up. But Emma, when you say you go live when you're out and about, there will be purpose there, won't there? That, you know, you'll know broadly what you're getting to. And
yeah, I do like have sort of like an idea. It's like I'm doing like a workshop, because I teach people on location photography. I'm a photographer, so I'm teaching them, and often when I arrive at a location, I'll just go live. I've not really thought much about it, but I know that the group will enjoy where I am. They'll love it. They want it because they're avid photographers, so they want to see where's Emma this week.
Yeah.
She's on top of a mountain somewhere. So they love it though. They want to. They just want to see where I am. So I've not really practiced it. I just sort of, I don't know. It just
what your audience wants, though. I think that's a really important part of that. You know your audience really well, and you're in tune with them, and you know what to give them. And I think that's a really important step. And I love that. And I think when you've got to the stage where you can sort of do that, and actually the more lives you do, the sooner you get to that point where that kind of spontaneity becomes quite effortless.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I just sort of just think to myself, they'd love it here. I'll show them, and they do. They're like, "Whoa, Emma, where are you today?" And they're really interested in that.
Yeah.
So I guess yeah.
So I can see Jackie Walker said, what software do you use to divide the video? Now this is a big one. So there's a variety of ways you can do this. I'm
not going live. I'm all right.
Who's not on mute? Let's have a look. Is that better?
There we go.
Okay, sorry guys.
No, it's all right. It was just the thing where sometimes a second audio input makes me go, it's sort
I
of
think
completely...
it made us all go a bit,
Yeah.
where's that coming from? It's like when you've got a tab open and you don't realise.
Yeah. Yeah, the voices are coming from somewhere. So yeah, okay. So I personally use Premiere Pro. So that is paid software from Adobe. That's part of the Adobe CS suite. However, I am moving over more and more to using a free piece of software called Davinci Resolve. Now, Davinci Resolve is a professional piece of editing software. It has two versions, the free version and the paid version. The free version is absolutely amazing. It does audio editing, it does video editing. It's got a really, really powerful graphics package. It's got a color correction and color grading suite in it. This software used to cost, when it first came out in the late 90s, this software package literally cost $200,000. It is now free to download online. It's incredible. It's an indicator of how far the sort of the world of kind of software and video production has come. So that is free. That's an amazing piece of software. If you are after something a little less kind of sort of full on, there's a piece of free software called OpenShot, which is for PC. I think there's a Mac version as well. OpenShot is, again, a really good editor. It's a really great editing piece of software. And with all of these things, there are tutorials available. Both, at the moment, as Donnie will know, I'm currently taking my membership through a whole bunch of editing daily tasks to build up those skills. But there's plenty of stuff on YouTube as well. There's no shortage of tutorials out there about around editing. But I would say I prefer editing on a desktop. I find editing on a phone it drives me bananas. But I think that's only because I'm so used to the luxury of editing on a 3 screens and a small a color monitor.
You haven't got a small setup, so it's like you're used to having the full.
Yeah, there's lots of I can sort of pull things out and do all sorts of stuff. But Davinci Resolve and indeed OpenShot works really well on one screen. So I love those. I mean, because they're free and they're very powerful. You're not having to stint on anything with those. They are tools with which you can do some pretty complex stuff. Really, you know, I could quite happily edit pretty much all of my professional client work on Davinci Resolve, the free version, and have a great and do an amazing job.
Yeah.
As a tool, it is second to none.
Yeah, I downloaded that one on your recommendation whilst still in Spain.
Yes.
And I can vouch that it works even in Spanish quite well. But I do use yeah, it took a bit of Google Translate, but it works just as well.
That is hardcore. I'm impressed.
Yeah, it was the Spanish that was the problem, not the editing. But on my phone, I do use, and I talk about this all the time, I use an app called InShot.
Yeah, InShot's
probably
great.
heard of that, because, and the reason why I really like that is because it's almost the same editable user face as what we've become accustomed to with TikTok and stories and reels and all of the social. So it's almost like its own little independent social video editor. It's just like a little itty bitty one. So that's what I use for you know, for little quick snaps that are going online for social. But I mean, the Davinci Resolve, I also love Premiere Pro, but it took me a while to get around that. And to be fair, I don't know if I would have gotten around it had I not have had previous experience with Audition, with doing audio. So that's always a fun one. But I do think that for the guys that are doing more serious video editing, if, like, for instance, if they ever wanted to create their own promo video, which I always think is fun, and, you know, chopping up little bits of the lives that you've done or trainings that you've done and all of that, I think that's a great project for a laugh. You know, for business as well, but it can be quite fun to do. It's almost like your own mood board of video.
Absolutely.
I think the Davinci Resolve would be a good option for them. Absolutely.
I mean, and there are two other. There are two mobile sort of tablet and phone editors that I use as well, partly because they function in a similar way to something like, you know, an edit suite that I'm familiar with. And you've really got to bear in mind that I'm coming from this with all of my prejudices about the software that I've spent the last 20 years using, which are all roughly look the same. So I like VN, which is a free editor, VN editor, VN Media, I think it's called, which is great. That's a really handy bit of software. And then KineMaster, which is KINE Master, which has a free version, but that's a nifty little editor. Of the two, actually, I'd say I prefer VN, because KineMaster, you know, it almost makes things overly complicated. You're looking, if you're editing on your phone, the reality is you're probably looking to deliver something which has a slightly simpler kind of setup. So, you know, if you want complexity, if you want more depth, and if you want to do more with your edit, get it onto the desk, get the stuff onto the desktop, and do it that way, because you'll have a lot more flexibility with what you can do. But yeah, VN and KineMaster. But of those two, I would say, if you only had to choose two, InShot and VN, I would say are two very good ones. So what's good to use for transcribing video or lives? I use Rev. I use rev.com, or if I'm being cheap, I will upload to, so rev.com is a paid service. It's like, I think it's like, how much is Rev now? It's not very much. It is a transcription, $1.25 per minute, and that's with a human looking over it. So for short videos, you know, you're looking at kind of, you know, a couple of quid, which is great, and that will come back, and you can have that as, although if you get them as captions, you will get the transcript and the captions as well. So that's a great way to do it. So you can use those captions then for for subtitling. So sometimes if I'm feeling cheap, I will upload my videos to YouTube. I will then download the auto-generated subtitles and do it that way.
Oh, that's a ninja tip if ever I heard one.
What you will have to do is spend a bit of time fettling because the text that comes down, it gets a little bit word soupy sometimes. You'll look at the stuff and go, what? What's that? What? But you can edit that text in YouTube itself. So you can go into the editor. I might actually, no, I won't do that. You can do that. So that is something that is doable. I'm just trying to think if there's any other ways I do it. No, and I normally just chuck it onto Rev and get them done, because they say it's normally 24 hours, but I've always found that with Rev, even with fairly large projects, it'll be hours. It'll be only a matter of hours before it comes back to you. It's dead easy.
I use AutoCap on my phone.
AutoCap, yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good one.
That costs me $3.99 a month.
Bingo.
And you know, some months I get my money's worth and some months I don't use it, and that's the inconsistency of me posting videos. But you know, it in all honesty, that's the truth. But on the months when I'm really on it, and especially maybe on the lead up to a launch, if I have little quick snap videos that I want to go out, I've always found, although again a bit word soupy, can be hilarious, the AutoCap believes I would ever say to my audience. And you can spend some time correcting. It is like autocorrect, you can have some real fun with and sometimes I think maybe I don't enunciate properly, but that's a different thing. So I mean, but it's a good one to have in your back pocket if you're ever wanting to do a quick edit on your mobile.
What else have we got? Is there any software you'd recommend to give different camera angles at the same time you can switch? So what we're talking about here is actually having a couple of different cameras and an ability to switch between the different sources. There is what's the name of the? You see, this is a great example of when lives go bad. There's like a box with a button on it, and it's got a name, and I cannot for the life of me think of it. The name was in my brain a second ago, and it has just disappeared. So you basically have, like a vision mixing box. So you can have bits of kit that you will hook your different cameras up to, and then put it in as a video feed, and you will be able to switch between these two cameras literally at the touch of a button. So this is particularly good if you're somebody who deals with craft or food. Maybe say you've got an overhead camera that's on your hands so you can see what you're doing. So you can just kind of at the press of a button switch between the one that you're looking at and the one that's overhead, which is looking at the task. If this doesn't come to me in the next during this Zoom, I will send Dawny the details of this, because it's a little bit of hardware, and this is a hardware rather than a software solution. There are software solutions, but they are not reliable, and particularly with that sort of camera switcher, you're better off doing it through a piece of hardware. Which the name of which is this is massively bug me. Sorry. So since Becky says, I do cake decoration tutorials. So it's perfect for that kind of stuff, because you set your cameras up so you can get a good second angle, third, and you can have multiple angles if you've got multiple cameras, and it's a very handy thing to have.
Yeah.
Have we got any drive lives? I like how your camera's depth of field. So thank you very much. I'm so pleased you noticed, Wendy. It's So I'm using a stills camera. Well, actually, it's a stills / video camera. It's just it's on a little stand behind my screen, and I'm using something called the Elgato Cam Link 4K. And what this is, it's like a dongle. It's a capture card, and it allows me to use my camera as it's got an HDMI port out, so I can use it as a webcam. So I'm using a Sony a7S II as my webcam, which is possibly overkill. But on that A7S, I'm also using some late 1960s vintage lenses. So in this case, I've got a 35mm Pentax Super Takumar, which is a lovely lens which you can pick up off manual lens. You can pick it up off eBay for I think about 30 quid. But it's a manual lens, so it's not going to be reaching for focus. The camera is set up so that if I move forward, it'll go a bit soft on me. If I move back, it's still there, but I get that lovely depth of field. It's a very kind of forgiving lens when it comes to the kind of the look of it. Yeah, so yeah, I saw Emma lean forward. Yeah, no, it's a proper lens. So I'm using it's a Sony A7S II. But if you have a digital camera with an HDMI port or an HDMI port out, which many kind of cameras do, you can use it as a webcam with this bit of kit. So the Elgato Cam Link it's a bit of hardware. Again, it's a dongle. Plug it into the USB port. Plug an HDMI cable into the Cam Link, and then it recognizes, your computer will then recognize the camera that it's plugged into as a webcam, and it does a lovely job. It does a lovely job.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Ladies, have you got any other burning questions for Tom before we thank him kindly and let him go back to his cocktails?
Oh, that's long gone. That's long gone.
Are we good?
Good.
I think we're good. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I've made notes upon notes upon notes, which is funny because we've had this conversation because we had a one-to-one earlier on last year. Oh God, last year.
Oh, no.
And I still haven't set up my G10 as my webcam yet, but I promise you I will. And
yeah.
What I did do that I promised I would do was I got myself the Yeti.
Wonderful.
So that I have better audio. So I mean, there is a journey here for me as well in regards to upping my whole tech situation.
Of course.
But that's absolutely wonderful. I think the main takeaway, although I've got lots of notes to share with the ladies afterwards, is that the main takeaway is actually the importance of this area of our business. We could be, for lack of a better term, adding more focus to video and making sure that we have those plans in place and that we have the right tech set up and that everything is maybe a little bit more meticulous behind the scenes. And I think there is this kind of throwaway culture because we are on social media so often that you just go live and you just do it, and and that's fine if you have a block over doing it and you're actually just trying to get to grips with overcoming that block. But when it gets to the stage of business where you're going live quite regularly, there's only these devils in the details that can make a difference in regards to the quality. And what I have always found with you, Tom, is that every time you go live, no matter where you're going live, whether you're on the Zoom with us this evening, whether you're on StreamYard with all your lovely branding around you, or whether you're in your own groups chatting away, it always looks like an incredibly professional setup. And but the good thing about that is it sets you apart, so it's almost like a unique selling point. Like you're going to watch a lot of videos, but what is it about this one that actually gives you that professional feel? And you always have that. So I think it's incredibly important for us. Well, I mean, it is, and it's the reason why we've come and picked your brain, because it's important for all of us in front of our audiences to
Mm,
have that level of professionalism, and you've given us a lot to go at, and I'm fairly certain that all of us will be going away with notes of things that we can
Great.
improve.
That's really great to hear. I mean, this is it. I've come to absolutely love doing lives, and the one thing that I think I'm coming away from this, actually, that I've mentally made a note, is actually do more repurposing, because I would be a crazy fool not to. I know that I'm going to go and have a look back over the sort of 18 months worth of lives I've done, and there are hours, probably
Yeah.
hundreds of hours now worth of content, and if you get set up with a setup you like the look of, it means that every live becomes a potential mine for content.
Yeah, absolutely.
Never be short of content again. What a beautiful place that is.
And that's it. And the repurposing is the key, right?
Yeah.
In actually what we tend to do is get ourselves caught up in the content machine, when in fact a lot of the themes that we discuss, a lot of the things that we do, they actually cross-populate over many different mediums. And if we could just kind of make more of what we already have, we would always be in that better position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100% agree. Wise words.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us again this
Pleasure.
evening. I really appreciate it. And I know that there's a number of ladies who are going to watch this on the replay and really enjoy it as well. Of course, I will give information about Tom's free group if anybody wants to join and find out even more about all of the golden nuggets when it comes to video and setup and tech. You cover all of it really, don't you? Pretty much all of it. So
with
and
varying degrees of sobriety as well.
well, that's okay, you're in good company here that way as well. So I'll do that and I'll add that into the group. And just a massive thank you again, lovely, for joining us.
It's so great to be here. Thank you so much, Julie. It's been a pleasure.